Hey everyone, welcome back for our breakdown of UFC 281 coming up this Saturday. An awesome card from Madison Square Garden, headlined, of course, by the middleweight championship between Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira. Um, an awesome fight between two kickboxers and two fighters that are super high level, mowing through guys. Pereira, since joining the organization, rushed to a title shot, but this is a fight with massive stakes for both the champion and the challenger, as well as an awesome card of fights under it. Zhang Wei Li looking to get her belt back from the current champion Carla Esparza, and a whole mess of main card and prelim action that we're going to be breaking down for Dine Sports. Nick, how we doing? How we feeling about 281 coming up this weekend?
Good man. Coming off a couple really kind of lackluster cards. Yeah, just not a lot of name value on those. This is awesome. Really looking forward to this. Every year the UFC kind of puts on an MSG card towards the end of the year. They're always stacked. This year's no exception. We're getting Frankie Edgar's retirement fight here as well. Poirier Chandler, which is fight of the night written all over it. And then the two title fights you mentioned. I mean, great main card. Really some solid prelims as well. There's a few fights on there that you could argue should be on the main card. But yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to breaking it down, and I think there's some good betting spots this week as well.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited to dig into these fights, dig into the betting lines with you. Starting at the top, as always. So, Israel Adesanya currently sitting as a minus 210 favorite against Alex Pereira, a man who has beaten him twice in kickboxing, which is, the big headline, what's selling this fight, what people want to see. A lot not, impressed by the Adesanya performances as of late. A lot of fights going to decisions just because he is such a reliable counter striker that he doesn't have to push forward and rush things in these 5 round fights. But against a guy with power like Alex Pereira, we're expecting to see fireworks here. I mean, a great clash between two super high level kickboxers. Pereira got the better of Izzy twice in the kickboxing ring, but he does only have half the kickboxing experience, 33-7 as a kickboxing professional compared to the 75-5 record of Adesanya. And then, of course, the huge advantage for Adesanya in terms of professional MMA experience as well, with this only being the seventh pro fight on the record of Alex Pereira. So it's a lot. It's a lot to come into a title fight. Getting respect like this from the odds maker against a champion that's defended the belt 7 times, it means a lot. And that's because of Pereira's power, that left hook that he caught Izzy with in their second meeting, and the left hook that we've already seen prevalent in his UFC fights, knocking out Sean Strickland his last time out. I was on him in that spot. I think he's a super high level kickboxer. I just don't think against Adesanya he's going to have the tools to last in this 5 round environment, in a fight where Izzy's really going to dictate where it takes place. I think mixing in grappling could be part of the game plan, but this is a fight Izzy could win by simply kickboxing. I think he's going in there looking for a win, and he's going to get it any means necessary. If it is staying behind his jab, making this a boring fight, countering Pereira, I think he is going to land the better counters. I think he has the better timing in an MMA cage where knees are more prevalent, the threat of the takedown. I think we're going to see new wrinkles to Izzy's game as well, from his last appearance in the octagon, especially with the work he's put in this camp, and a fight that really is a must win against a guy that arguably shouldn't be in a UFC title fight this early in his pro career, but obviously deserving of it based on the previous appearances. So I got Izzy all day. I think this is a good value at minus 210. I bet him at much higher numbers against more experienced UFC vets, and Pereira's just not there. I think while he's a big, scary Brazilian with power, that's what Izzy's designed to beat. These power punchers, he's going to be able to land the better counters. He's going to be able to, avoid getting touched as this fight goes on. So I got Izzy. I'm a huge fan. He's my number one guy, and I thought I'd start us off really, really telling you the reasons I'm on him. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I don't know how many how many people watch us every time we post for these pay-per-views, but I was passionately backing Sean Strickland against Alex Pereira in that last matchup. I thought Strickland would grapple him, and I mean that's a very clear hole in Pereira's game. I'm sure he's improving that area with Glover Teixeira. But yeah, Strickland just kind of walked forward, parried all his jabs, fell for every feint, and got clocked. Pereira's left hook is probably one of the strongest single punches in the UFC. Like you said, he's 2-0 against Izzy in kickboxing, but you do have to kind of put an asterisk next to both of those wins. The first one, he lost via decision. I mean, I rewatched the fight. Izzy kind of clearly won. It looked like they both thought so too when the judges read the scorecards. And then the second one, I mean, Izzy was kind of dominating. He had Pereira on a standing 8 count right before he got KO'd himself. So no real asterisk the second time. I mean, you get knocked out, you get knocked out, but Izzy has won more minutes against Pereira, even though he's 0-2 against him. I mean, the key for me here, I don't mind the odds. I like Izzy. I think anywhere around -200, he's a really good bet. But we look back to when he fought Costa. Izzy was only -140. That closed around -180, I think. There was steam on him going into the fight. This is a little bit wider. I think Pereira is probably more dangerous than Costa was going into that matchup. So the odds are about where they should be. I mean, Pereira is really a puncher's chance. I don't envision him beating Izzy on a decision. I don't really think that's a path for him here. He kind of needs that left hook, which he's going to have to set up with feints and traps and things like that. It's just, Izzy's so kind of hip to those. Like he's very, very good defensively, great defensive striker. And where Pereira was able to kind of close him down inside the kickboxing ring, it's definitely tougher in a big circular octagon. Izzy's great at lateral movement, moving left to right, and as dangerous Pereira is, he's kind of just a zombie the way he walks forward. So I think he's going to be there to be hit. I am a little afraid that Izzy's just going to do what he's been doing, kind of leg kick and jab and get the decision. And we see that with a lot of these long-ranking champs. We saw it with George St. Pierre towards the end of his career, John Jones at the end of his light heavyweight run. It's like when you're winning every single fight, why take a risk? Just keep winning. You're fighting the best guys in the world. So I could see a conservative approach from Izzy here, but at the same time, Pereira's really not the type of guy to let that happen the way a Cannonier did. So yeah, I'm hoping Pereira brings the fight. I'm with you. I think Izzy's the side for sure. I'm not confident on the inside the distance, but I do like him on the money line. Would I be shocked if Pereira caught him? No, because we've seen it before. He has been fast tracked to the title, but I think that's by design. The UFC knows what they're doing here. If you have Pereira fight Vittori, Whitaker, guys that can grapple, maybe he never gets this opportunity. They wanted to kind of make sure that they could make this fight for Izzy, who has lapped the division a couple times now. So yeah, I'm on Adesanya here. I wouldn't be shocked if he got caught, but this does feel like his fight to win or lose. And I know Pereira's been in front of big crowds before, but this is a little different. I mean, sold out MSG, headlining, title fight. All eyes on him, and I'm sure Adesanya, he keeps talking about a horror movie. I'm guessing we get like the Jason theme or something, some really long walkout again, where he makes Pereira wait in there. And yeah, I don't think Pereira's afraid of Adesanya, and vice versa. So it should be a good fight. I'm looking forward to it. My hopes are kind of tempered just because of Izzy's last few fights. He's fighting conservatively. I don't knock him for it. I just wish he wouldn't say, "Oh, this is going to be a bloody war," and then fight like that. It's like, okay, just you are what you are. You're an extremely good, gifted defensive striker, a la Floyd Mayweather, albeit a bit different of a style, but just that's what you are, man. Don't act like you're going to be this brawler, because you're not, and I don't think people would be as mad at him as fans. But that's a whole nother conversation. The bet's Adesanya. Love the money line. I think he gets it done here. And yeah, honestly, I mean, he brought this point up this week too. He's getting him at the right time. I mean, if Pereira's in the UFC for 3 more years, maybe he gets a loss to a Whitaker or Vittori or something like that. But he's going to get better at MMA. He's going to get better at grappling under Teixeira. So, yeah, I think the planets are aligned for Izzy to kind of avenge those losses here. And those 2 losses aren't as dramatic as maybe they're being built up to be. So Izzy for me here as well. And still.
And yeah, I mean, it's selling a fight that really doesn't need selling, just with the clash of styles. The rematch is just like the cherry on top. But yeah, Izzy switching stances, landing the better counters. I could see him getting the finish in the later rounds, but if it is a more conservative approach, Pereira should have the cardio for a 25-minute match. If it's all kickboxing, it'd just be if Izzy's mixing and grappling or getting a knockdown late would be his path to a finish, I think.
Yeah, and just one more quick point. He's definitely getting fast tracked here. I think I saw a stat. He's the fastest path to a title since
Lesnar.
Brock Lesnar. Yeah, and Lesnar, what was that? That was a marketing thing. So I mean, we're kind of getting a similar scenario here. It's just Adesanya obviously a better champ than I think. Who did he fight? Me or Carwin? Yeah, tougher test for Pereira than what Lesnar had to deal with when he kind of broke into the UFC. But
Yep, awesome fight. Looking forward to it. And still, Izzy Adesanya, and we will now go on to the main event, a women's strawweight fight. This should be a fun one too. Carla Esparza against Zhang Weili. The last fight for Carla Esparza when she won the strawweight title, not a fun fight. Just an awful,
not even
low
a fight.
volume, a staring contest with Rose Namajunas. I'm expecting an entirely different fight here with Zhang Weili. Super aggressive, super strong, way better striker. Her wrestling too. I mean, this time spent at Fight Ready, her wrestling's really improved. Her strength. There's a clip going around this week, her lifting up Francis Ngannou, which really makes me confident in exchanges with Esparza, who is good at timing takedowns, getting fights to the mat, burning the clock. She has very high fight IQ. That's how she got the belt. That's why she's on such a good win streak at current. It's just I don't think she has the threat on the feet to really keep Weili from pressuring her. Weili should be comfortable when this hits the mat, and I think able to get up and put it on Esparza as this goes on. We haven't seen anything in terms of declining cardio for Weili over the course of 5-round fights. So I really think as a massive favorite, as the challenger, all the signs are pointing to her getting the job done over an older vet that's been in the game for so long. It's just someone that's tough to bet against because she keeps ending up on the right side of these decisions, finding a way to win these fights. So at 400, it's kind of tough to get a piece of Weili here. I may be playing her to find a finish in the spot, just expecting over the course of 25 minutes her pressure and volume to be enough. But yeah, I think she's certainly the right side. I expect to see her getting the belt back off a champion that just really, while she is high level, I don't see her able to hold down Weili for the majority of this bout.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Weili Zhang here. So do the bookmakers, though. I think that's the issue. Where you're looking at a minus 400 against Carla Esparza, who's going to be the better wrestler here. And I mean, in those losses to Rose, not the first loss where she got head kicked, but in her loss to Rose, I mean, the issue was her getting taken down and kind of staying on her back. I think the difference here is that when she was fighting Rose, she was really kind of more focused on the striking, and that kind of opened opportunities to be taken down against Namajunas. Yeah, I mean, it's sprawl and brawl here for Weili Zhang, and it's a very clear path to victory. But yeah, man, like we're seeing like plus 300, like that's a little crazy. Carla's certainly live. I don't love the number, but I do think you could kind of tie Weili into parlays. But like you said, I think inside the distance is probably the better angle. Weili is a 60% takedown in the UFC, but like you mentioned, she's been training at Fight Ready, improving that wrestling, training with the likes of Henry Cejudo. But yeah, I don't know. I think she's going to be the stronger fighter here. And we've seen Carla in the past. The only fights she really struggles in are against those super strong fighters like Tatiana Suarez, like a prime Joanna Jędrzejczyk. So I like Weili here. And I do feel a little bad for Carla, man. I don't know if you watched the press conference, but Weili's getting the crowd pop. Everyone loves her. And then Carla, like out of desperation, she's like, I'm going to keep this title in America. Obviously, Weili's from China. And the crowd boos her in New York, which is just baffling. It was just like a super sad, cringe moment. But yeah, I'm all over Weili here. I think she gets it done. I think she's the best in the division, and I honestly think she maybe won that last fight against Rose. So yeah, I'm all over Zhang Weili. I think and new.
Zhang Weili again getting the belt, and yeah, I mean, again at that number, even in parlays, it's something I wouldn't be too
Yeah,
keen
it's
on.
tricky.
But yeah, I think the KO is a good prop bet for the
Or just
co-main
go
event here.
inside. Yeah, I mean the inside. I think the line is similar. Inside the distance and the KO. Like, I don't think anyone's expecting a sub here, but if she knocks her down and then chokes her out, you wouldn't want to lose that KO bet for like 20 extra cents of juice. So,
Certainly. All right, lightweight belt: Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler. should be a fight of the night, as we can expect here. Michael Chandler, last time in MSG, that war with Justin Gaethje did not go his way, but really put on a show for the fans. And I'm kind of see another slug 'em out type fight here over the course of 15 minutes between these two lightweights. Dustin Poirier, the minus 230 favorite, and that's the side I'm on. I like him at this number. Michael Chandler is somebody who I have not been a fan of since entering the UFC. The chin, the way in which he fights, well, it's a fan-friendly style. I don't think it's going to prove to be one with longevity here in the UFC. And the wins he's gotten, well, Dan Hooker, Tony Ferguson, I don't think it's going to be the same level fight as the scrap against Dustin Poirier. He held his own against Gaethje, but he was getting pieced up. He got knocked down in the second round of that bout. And Poirier is a fighter who I have at that same level, number one guy really at lightweight for the past couple of years, and somebody who, had to wait on his title opportunity against Charles Oliveira because it was first given to Michael Chandler. A little bit of spite here from Poirier, somebody who hasn't won back-to-back fight, or who hasn't lost back-to-back fights before, and somebody whose past two losses have come against the champion Charles Oliveira and the champion Khabib Nurmagomedov. So I really think he has a good outing here. He's the better boxer. His striking is way more technical than that of Michael Chandler. While Chandler has the edge in power, I think Poirier is going to be able to stay in his face, pressure him a lot, put on much better boxing combinations, and keep that downhill pressure in order to take away from the power of Chandler as he works on his back foot. Chandler's scary to bet against just because of that one punch aspect to his game, but his chin's not great. We've seen him clipped in the past, and I think Poirier certainly has a path to finishing him here, especially if it is that same hyper aggressive, low fight IQ style that Chandler has had since entering the UFC. So I think he's going to get some love at this number. I think he could pull off the upset of Poirier here. But I mean, Poirier is one of the top guys in the world. Give me him minus 230 against Chandler, without a second of hesitation for me.
Yeah, I mean, earlier in the week, we were looking around minus 200. Now that it's inflating, I'm not as excited about the line here. I'm with you. I do favor Poirier. I think he's the better technical striker, and I think most of this fight's going to take place on the feet. But I will say, just to play a little bit of devil's advocate here, Michael Chandler is a D1 wrestler. He has talked in interviews leading up to this fight. He said, yeah, I like putting on the fan favorite fights, but I have nothing left to prove now. He's like, now I need to win. And it sounds like maybe he's going to shoot for a few takedowns here. He's going to do a little bit more wrestling than we're used to seeing him do in MMA and especially in the UFC. So if he really can lean on kind of a grappling heavy game plan under Henry Hooft, I think he could put together a decent fight. But at the same time, I mean, Poirier, he's not a great wrestler, but I think he's good enough to keep this fight standing as much as he needs to. And the thing about Chandler, maybe he wins the first round, maybe he can wrestle and kind of take it from Poirier. But he certainly has the worst gas tank. And if he's going to be wrestling for, say, 10, 12 minutes, I think he's going to start to fade, where Poirier, we've seen him kind of last into those later rounds and still carry his power. So on the feet, I favor Poirier. I do think Chandler can secure a couple takedowns here and keep things closer than the line maybe looks. But once it's all said and done, I do think Poirier probably catches him before the end of it. And I will say Chandler's chin did look a lot better against Gaethje. Some of those shots he ate were surprising. He was kind of put on his butt against Ferguson, though, which was not a great thing to see. So I don't know. I think the chin thing's a little bit played out when you look at who's actually KO'd Chandler in the past. But at the same time, I mean, I would certainly give the chin edge to Poirier. I certainly give the brawl and the striking edges to Poirier as well. I mean, Poirier defends more than 53% of the strikes thrown against him. Chandler barely has a positive striking differential in the UFC. So another factor here, I don't know that Chandler's had to deal with many southpaws lately, and Poirier certainly brings that new look. Expecting a lot of leg kicks from both guys. It should be interesting. Going to be an amazing fight. And I do like Poirier. I do think he wins. He's going to be my pick here. But as this line inflates, I mean, 230 is getting a little dicey. And if it gets over kind of 250, I think I'm just not going to touch it. But yeah, Poirier's the side. I think he's just the better striker, and most of this fight should take place at striking range.
Yeah, I could see some buyback on the line for Michael Chandler, just given the recency bias, folks tend to have. And I also will just mention Poirier, a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, for if this fight
Eh,
is to hit the mat. We have seen get-ups and things like that in the past to at least, make me confident if Chandler decides to shoot. But I'm not convinced that's going to be part of his game plan in a 3-round fight here.
Yeah, I think he does shoot. I mean, uh, yeah, it sounds like you will. I mean, the interviews he's kind of brought it up a few times, and people keep asking like, "Oh, is this going to be another brawl? Are you going to match the Gaethje fight from MSG last year?" And he's like, "Yeah, I think I showed what I needed to in that fight." And he's like, "Now I just really want to win." Do I believe him? Once the crowd gets going, like, is he going to stick to that? Maybe not. But based on what we're hearing this week, more than any other Chandler fight in the UFC, it sounds like he might actually wrestle. But like I said, I mean, if he wrestles, he could just gas. So I like Poirier either way.
Yep, we will see come Saturday if Michael Chandler is shooting, and the winner of that awesome fight at lightweight. Now to bantamweight, Frankie Edgar, his final fight, his retirement fight here against Chris Gutierrez at MSG, a New York guy, Frankie Edgar, somebody who, for a long time, a great champion in the UFC. His past 2 fights, tough performances, brutal knockout against Marlon Vera, brutal knockout prior to that against Corey Sandhagen. I really wouldn't say there's been a massive decline in the game of Frankie Edgar. I mean, the speed isn't necessarily what it once was, but he's still throwing with great volume, mixing in shots. The fight against Cheeto, though, makes me a bit hesitant just with a matchup here facing Gutierrez, a striker with, great kicks, really solid stand up. I could see him standing a bit too much against Gutierrez. I mean, he landed 200 strikes against Vera, went 3 of 9 on his takedown attempts. And that style would likely lead to another, loss here if Gutierrez is going to be, matching him in terms of the stand up on the feet, landing with more power, and having a chin that hasn't worn quite the damage that Edgar has. Um, Gutierrez also being a bit slept on. I mean, 6-0-1 since joining the UFC, 73% takedown defense. I think that's a little blown out of proportion. He's not going to be as effective as Chito Vera when it comes to defending shots of Edgar. Uh, I'm also just not convinced Edgar is going to be shooting a ton here in his retirement fight at MSG, standing up a bit more, putting on volume, looking to entertain. And Gutierrez at these odds isn't somebody that I'm rushing to back, but I do view him as the rightful favorite in this spot. So that's going to be my pick here. It's not a fight, I'm very confident in. I'd love to see Frankie get a win in his last fight. It's just tough for me to pull the trigger at even a plus 180.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Frankie is a legend, and we've seen a lot of these legends go out this year. I think this is a better matchup than we've seen some of them go out on, though. But yeah, just to kind of sing Frankie's praises and give him his flowers quick. I mean, some of the best fights in UFC history against Great Maynard. Obviously, one of the first to solve the puzzle of BJ Penn. Former champion, and he's challenged for the title in multiple divisions. Just such a stud, man. And he's really small, and the fact that he was winning and dominating at lightweight for a while just really speaks to the type of fighter he is. He talked in his interviews about kind of taking on that Rocky role, like Rocky Balboa, and that's who he's been his whole career. He's always the smaller guy. He's always he's not always the underdog, but he kind of plays that role regardless. And yeah, man, I mean, we're getting a great number on him here. Just trying to take a quick look. I mean, we're seeing around plus 180, plus 170. I think he's the value side. Gutierrez has looked good, don't get me wrong, but I mean, his takedown defense sits at like just over
73%.
73. I don't think that's 73. And I mean that's decent, but has he ever faced a D1 wrestler before? I don't think he has. I mean, we look at who he's beaten in the UFC. That last KO against Baccarat was nice, the spinning back fist. But other than that, it's not like he has real punch KO power. Like that was his only knockout in the UFC, other than the light kick KO of Vince Morales. And then he's beating guys that are no longer on the roster. Andre Ewell. He went to a draw with Cody Durden, the one other wrestler he faced, and Durden's now a flyweight, and he was kind of dominating the grappling exchanges. Baccarat was able to take him down. I just look at the resume here, and while I agree at this stage in their career, Gutierrez is certainly more athletic. He's going to be quicker. He's going to have a power advantage. We look at what Edgar got KO'd by. It was a massive flying knee from a huge Corey Sandhagen, a massive front kick from Ver in the third round. And I thought Edgar was up going into that third round, probably 2 rounds to none. So he can certainly still hang at the top of this division. And yeah, man, I mean, the leg kicks scare me, but at the same time, Frankie's done a good job kind of catching kicks and turning them into takedowns throughout his career. And yeah, I mean, I don't think he's the type to just stand and bang if there is a path for him here to win via takedowns. He's in front of the home crowd, sure, but he's not the type to just stand and swing in the pocket if he doesn't have to. I rewatched that Pedro Munoz fight like twice this week, and he looks so good there. I know it was a couple years ago, but if he can fight similarly, just kind of moving right to left, shooting for takedowns when Chris is coming forward on him, I think he could win this decision. I'm not as concerned about Gutierrez's power as I think the bookmakers are, or a lot of the people who are betting him on this fight. I just don't really see the punch power. And I mean, outside of the leg kick potential, yeah, I think that kind of opens up opportunities for takedowns. So yeah, maybe this is a little bit of bias showing, but man, at this number, like pushing plus 200, I don't see how you don't kind of like Frankie for value. Gutierrez has he ever been a minus 200 against anyone before? Like, this is just such a big step up in competition for him. And yeah, the Baccarat KO was nice, but I mean, Baccarat's kind of had a terrible fight IQ in the UFC. That's kind of his calling card. And that first round was close. I mean, he almost went out in the first round. So I don't know. I like Frankie here. I love Frankie as a fighter. Hate to see him go. Really want to see him go out on top. So is there a little bias in my argument? Certainly. And I'm willing to admit that. But at the number, I mean, I don't see how he's not the value side. So I like Frankie here. I think he can wrestle. I think he can win striking exchanges. I do see him as the better technical boxer still. I do worry about the leg kicks and some of the crazy spinning stuff, but I don't know that Frankie's lateral movement's going to give Chris the openings to kind of land something like that. So yeah, I'm on Frankie here. Maybe not the most confident play, but as far as like a plus 180 goes, I think it's just a really good side.
Yeah, he's a live dog for sure. It should be a good fight. And if he picked Gutierrez, if he thinks this is the guy he's going to get a win over on his way out, very plausible. It's just I'm not going to be grabbing that even at a plus 180. All right, and opening the main card, another matchup at lightweight. This should be a fun fight. Dan Hooker taking on Claudio Puelles. If you'd like, I'll throw this one over to you. Let's hear your thoughts for this matchup.
Yeah, I think Hooker's being disrespected on the line here. Yeah, Puelles has looked good. He's certainly a submission threat. He has the knee bar wins in back-to-back fights. But I don't know. I'm just not impressed by his resume. Clay Guida, he taps so quick in that knee bar. He just didn't want to blow out his leg. And then I'm not impressed by a win over Grutzmacher. He looked terrible in the Jordan Levitt fight. And now he's getting Dan Hooker coming off, a loss to Islam Makhachev, a loss where he cut weight against maybe the next title challenger at 145. I just think this is kind of recency bias we're getting on the line here. And we're still seeing Hooker as the favorite, minus 155 up to minus 160, 70 in some books. But I think he should be over minus 200. And the reason I'm so confident is you kind of look through Hooker's career, other than the Makhachev fight, which I just consider an outlier. Like, you can't really even weigh that. He's done good against grapplers. I mean, Iaquinta was shooting on him constantly. He did good to kind of stand on his feet and pick him apart in that one. I mean, he KO'd Gilbert Burns, but Burns was down in weight, so we won't go too deep into that one. I don't usually like to go way, way back in time. But if we go to Hooker's debut against Ian Entwistle, Entwistle was going for leg locks specifically, and Hooker was able to defend the leg locks and KO him on the ground with elbows. And that's years ago. I certainly know for a fact that in this camp, because of interviews, he's been training to defend leg locks. He's been training to stay on his feet. He's going to have dramatic striking advantages here. I think he's going to feel great going into this fight after having just cut to 145. And yeah, he's got the city kickboxing team with him. I just think everything's in Hooker's corner here. Puelles, he's been impressive, but against who? And that's really what I'm asking myself. And as much as I love Clay Guida, like, that's not a win that tells me you're going to be a ranked fighter at 155. So if he can get it done here, I'll probably change my tune real quick. But I mean, Hooker averages more than double the significant strikes per minute. He absorbs way less. And he has a near 80% takedown defense in the UFC. And it's not like Puelles is really great wrestler shooting single and double legs to get him down. I like Hooker here. I think it's just a matter of sprawl, brawl. He could probably KO Puelles. And if it does go to the decision, I think he's going to have the bigger moments. He's just got to kind of stay off the mat as much as possible. And if he does go down, stay calm, get out of those positions, similar to what he did in his UFC debut. So I like Hooker a lot here. I think the line is off, and he's probably one of my favorite money line bets on the card.
I like Dan Hooker as well in this spot. You know, can't disrespect his grappling. Good grappler. Could even catch submissions of his own. Can't disrespect the guy's resume. He's been fighting absolute killers at 155 pounds. And then the move down for Arnold Allen as well. I mean, just guys on massive win streaks. He's been stepping up, taking on, and you know, meeting right there in the octagon, standing and trading. You know, for Hooker, durability feels like a bit of a concern, but his past two losses were, you know, under 5 minutes of combined cage time. I think he is still able to take shots, and Puelas isn't really a guy that's going to be threatening him at all when it comes to striking on the feet. So he should be able to dictate the exchanges when these two are upright kickboxing. You know, the knee bar does scare me. Puelas has other great submission attacks as well. But I mean, I cashed a bet specifically on the knee bar in his matchup with Clay Guida. I may be looking at, you know, a prop like that again as a bit of a hedge, just because this guy is a lethal grappler. It's just impossible to compare his resume thus far to that of Dan Hooker, who's, you know, been in there with much better opponents, looked clean recently. You know, great performance against Nazareth Haqparast before those recent losses. And he's just a guy that you expect to outclass most of the lower level competition in this division. So even if Paulus is a top 25, top 30, top 20 fighter at lightweight, I'm not sure he's going to be getting by Dan Hooker. So yeah, at these odds, he's definitely the side. I don't think I'm going to be going too heavy. I'd love to see Dan Hooker get a win. It is just, you know, a fight I'm a bit concerned about because of the ceiling of Paulus that has yet to be determined. I mean, two knee bars in a row, like we could really see a special run coming out of him moving forward. But I think Hooker's able to get the job done, keep it standing for the most part, and you know, win, whether it be inside or you know, by judge's decision.
Yeah, I just think it's value, so I love it. But
Yeah,
we're on the same side.
I like it. I like it. So now moving on to the preliminary portion of the card, staying at lightweight, Brad Riddell taking on Renato Moicano. This fight near pick'em with Moicano sitting minus 125 accurate. I'm a big fan of both guys. I love the way they fight. Moicano's a gangster. The way he took that fight against RDA on short notice and really showed up for that back and forth war, but he really only struggles against the top tier guys. To name a few: Jose Aldo, Korean Zombie, Rafael Fiziev. But you know, I think he's the better grappler compared to Brad Riddell. We'll see that evident if and when this fight hits the mat. But he's also a really serviceable striker. The training he's done, American Top Team, the like. You know, really able to put his hands together, and we've seen these improvements in more recent fights as well. So I think while Riddell is certainly live, certainly somebody who I could even consider taking in a spot like this, it's just hard to side with him. The two recent performances, not as sharp. You know, he's strong and he is the better striker. He could put better combinations together against Moicano, land the heavier shots. But yeah, it's hard to see a super clear path to victory here. If he could get like on top of Moicano in these grappling exchanges and work on him from the guard, I'd say potentially that's a good path. But then there's also chances for Moicano to snatch subs off his back there. So dangerous spot. I think Moicano at pick'em is certainly the side that I'm leaning.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Moicano a lot here. I don't know. I hear a lot of sharp people this week on Riddell. He's certainly the better striker. Really technical boxer, former striking coach at Tiger Muay Thai. He's got the city kickboxing team with him here this week as well, which is probably a plus. But I mean, you look at statistically, and Moicano made so much damage against RDA that last fight, but he's still defending more than 60% of the strikes thrown against him. To me, that number just really stood out. I think he's faced the better competition lately. As good as Riddell has looked, I mean, his best win on his resume is certainly Drew Dober, and that was a controversial, really, really close decision. Moicano, I mean, if he can get you down, his grappling is just next level. I think the move up to 155 has been huge for him. He looked amazing against Hernandez. I think he won that 5th round on 2 scorecards against RDA too, which shows you, I mean, he has the cardio if he needs it. And yeah, I mean, you look at the guys he's losing to, it's former champions, Aldo, RDA, and then guys like Korean Zombie, Fiziev. And yeah, as much as I like Jalen Turner, I don't know. I think Moicano would have fared better in that spot. And yes, that's a hypothetical, but I think stylistically we're looking at kind of a grappler versus striker where the grappling advantage is much wider than the striking advantage. Moicano has a really good jab that he can work behind. I think he's going to be a little bit longer here. Not a huge reach advantage, but he does fight well with his length. He's taller by 4 inches. So yeah, I think Moicano can hang on the feet here. He'll need to be careful not to get caught. We've seen him chin to timed in the past. But yeah, I think he's going to ground him before the end of this. Near 50% takedown accuracy for Moicano as well, which is actually a really solid number considering some of the guys he's faced. Yeah, I like him here. I kind of like him by submission. I kind of like him inside the distance, but I think this line might flip. I mean, I hear a lot of people talking about the city kickboxing parlay. You take Izzy, Hooker, Riddell, and then Oldberg in the opener. I think more and more money is going to come in on that, and that could flip the line in this fight specifically. So if I could get plus money on Moicano on the money line, I think that's going to be one of my favorite bets. But I don't mind him as an inside the distance play as well. So it's Moicano for me here. Yeah, I like the value a lot.
Yeah, and I'd probably even throw something down -125 where the line currently
Yeah,
sits,
I agree.
if needed. Yep. All right. Next up, we will take a look at this light heavyweight bout. Dominic Reyes making a return from a short hiatus against Ryan Spann. What are your thoughts on this one? Taking Reyes off a 18-month layoff, or?
Yeah, I mean Reyes, he's tricky. Obviously, he had that fight with John Jones. Many people thought he won, and then he's lost to two of. So his last 3 losses are to the 3 most recent light heavyweight champions, not including Glover Teixeira, who he's been training with in Connecticut. So, I mean, he's on a 3-fight losing streak. Obviously, I think that's kind of what's keeping this line close. I do think he's a much better fighter than Ryan Spann, though. He's going to have wrestling advantages here. I think he's the much better striker. He's the lengthier striker, better cardio. The thing with Spawn is, I mean, he had a lot of hype coming into the UFC. He had kind of a lackluster performance against Sam Alvey. And then after that, he's just been super inconsistent. He's very, very dangerous as a finisher. He has that great guillotine. We saw it against Ian Kudalaba. Tons of power, which we saw against Misha Serkinov. But yeah, not the highest fight IQ, and I think his head has gotten a little swollen since the last time we saw him fight. Hearing him in interviews this week, he said there was a moment in the Kudalaba fight where he realized he'd be a light heavyweight champion. Kudalaba's looked terrible over his last few fights. I don't really think you could gauge yourself that way. And yeah, I like that Reyes is with Glover. He said Glover's really helped him kind of start to focus and live in the moment. I think that John Jones fight, like that loss really did a lot to hurt Reyes' psyche. His ego got too big even in a loss, and I think he just was more than willing to kind of stand in the pocket and trade with guys like Prochazka and Blachowicz, which is obviously a terrible idea. And I mean, he lasted in the second round of both those fights. I think Spawn is going to be dangerous for the first round, but as he gets into the second round, I think we'll start to see Reyes probably pull away. I think he's the better fighter here. A little bit concerned about Spawn scoring an early finish. That's what's keeping me from really going heavy. But I'm not concerned about the layoff. I think it was needed, and I think it's a positive for Reyes. I think he gets back in the win column.
Yeah, first round's definitely something to look at. I mean, 4 of his previous 5 fights for Ryan Spann have finished in 1 round or under. Reyes would probably want a deeper fight here. You know, the main issue in these losses has been his striking defense. There's been big glaring holes, but while Spann's a powerful guy, he could put anyone out. He is not nearly as good a technical striker as Yuri or Jan or John Jones, clearly. So, I mean, while he certainly has a puncher's chance in this spot, one would think Reyes is the better technical striker, can use his length to an advantage, can stay out of range of Spann's power, and can defend himself more so than he has in these 3 losses. You know, he said defense has been one of the highlights of this camp, making sure he has shored up his striking defense, and that gives me some additional confidence to take him in the spot. But I mean, -220, I'm probably not going to get to the window. You know, just the layoff, the recent performances. Reyes has never been someone I like to back, but Spann is somebody who I like to fade. So, I mean, Reyes is going to be the pick for me, but ultimately probably not going to be a fight I'm putting any money on.
Cool.
And now we will go ahead and look at a women's flyweight belt between Erin Blanchfield and Molly McCann. A fight I will be putting money on and taking a shot with the plus 300 underdog, Meatball Molly. It's tough. I mean, she's been beating cans and looking good. The two spinning elbow finishes back to back, very impressive. But Blanchfield is a super high level opponent and somebody who can definitely give problems to Molly McCann if she elects to go to the wrestling and taking this fight to the mat. Um, it's been a weakness for McCann in the past. I mean, she has some good offensive wrestling, but when put on her back, she does not look great. And Blanchfield is, looking like one of the best flyweights in the world. And when it comes to, wrestling at current, I mean, she's nasty. She's been getting some big wins in the UFC. It's just she's so young, and I'm not sure in this fight against a savvy vet, if Molly could put some hands together and land the big shot she has been as of late, energized by the crowd, she could definitely pull off another upset here. I mean, she has the better boxing. And I mean, stealing rounds with a takedown too isn't out of the realm of possibility here. Facing a girl in McCann that while she's strong, is probably going to have a bit more trouble getting McCann down compared to some of her other opponents. I mean, Maverick, it was a very impressive performance when Blanchfield beat Miranda Maverick, and the performance of Maverick last weekend, kind of showcases just how good of a fighter she is. But this number is just out of control. I mean, we have the exact same odds in the co-main event. Zhang Wei Li minus 400 against the plus 300 Esparza. I'm way more interested in Molly McCann as a dog than I would be Carla Esparza at that number. And yeah, she's live again in this spot against a much younger opponent, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I'm with you on the fact that the line is wrong. It's off. But I'm taking Blanchfield here. I just think it's a terrible matchup for Molly. Only 46% takedown defense in the UFC. She really hasn't faced a ton of great grapplers either. Blanchfield, really young, like you said, but I think that works to her advantage. I mean, both of these girls are making dramatic improvements fight to fight. But yeah, I mean, Blanchfield just seems like maybe a future contender in this division. I know the UFC wants to see Molly win. She's been great for marketing and things like that. But yeah, this is just a huge step up from who she's been facing. I mean, Hannah Goldie probably isn't UFC level. I mean, Luana Carolina is okay, but barely UFC level. And then we have, yeah, Blanchfield just beat Aldrich, who used to be a top 10 fighter. Maverick, who many considered a future title contender. She's looked amazing. And I mean, she's scoring nearly 68% of the takedowns she's shooting. Molly's barely defending 50%. They both land a ton of volume. I mean, Blanchfield's not afraid to throw strikes. They both land over 5 per minute. Yeah, Molly has the power advantage here, but I think Blanchfield's going to have the cardio. I think she's going to have the grappling. And as Molly's been really inspired by the crowd her last couple fights at the O2 Arena, and I do think the crowd's going to have her back here. But Blanchfield's from New York, so I think it's going to be more split than Molly's seen the last few times out. I think Blanchfield's going to have support here as well. I don't like the number. I probably wouldn't tie her into parlays. But yeah, I mean, if the line does narrow as more people start to put money on Molly at this plus number later in the week, then maybe I get to Blanchfield. But yeah, I don't know. Plus 300 is a little crazy. I don't blame you for taking the dog shot, but to me, I think Blanchfield's just the better fighter, and she's going to lean on her grappling heavily here against McCann, who really hasn't had to deal with that much lately. We actually saw Goldie have a few minutes grappling against her, and yeah, Blanchfield's light years ahead of her. So I don't know. I like her in a win here. Don't love the number. Don't blame me for taking the dog shot, but I do think she gets it done.
And just one last point I'll add, Goldie had those good moments on the ground, not nearly as good as Aaron Blanchfield is a offensive grappler. But it was in an exchange that Molly found the finish, of pushing Goldie off of a submission attempt, getting to the feet, and right away applying the pressure, getting Goldie against the cage and finding the finish. So, I mean, sprawl and prawl kind of style could get her the win here, whether it be by finish or a fight that goes to decision. I'm more so just playing the number at plus 300, plus 310. Yeah. All right. Moving on now, a middleweight scrap between Andre Petrosky and Wellington Turman. Petrosky sitting a minus 200 favorite right now against Turman. At that number, I think a decent look. He's had impressive wins in the UFC since coming up. I mean, Nick Maximov quickly finishing, put on a bit of a clinic against Huey Zhang, but I mean, I think Petrosky is going to be, live or favored in the spot because of his ability to put things together on the feet that Wellington Turman really has not shown. He has good power. He has a good overhand. He has shots that, while they are sometimes looping, they could come from either stance, and he seems to connect more often than he is missing. against these, opponents with more experience than him inside of the octagon. And I really like what I've seen out of Petrosky grappling as well. I mean, Turman's a dangerous grappler, training again with Glover Teixeira, Alex Pereira there in Connecticut, but not somebody I'm really scared of Petrosky getting submitted by, as he outclassed Maximov on the mat. And he's been grappling heavy as well, doing Fury grappling matches, a win over Phil Hawes, a win over Eric Anders. So I really don't see him getting submitted in this spot, and I would expect him to have the better moments while this fight is on the feet. Turman 2 wins in a row, but he's not somebody I'm really ever interested in backing. So I mean, at this number, I'd probably lean Petrosky, but not at all a confident play.
Yeah, I really don't like either of these guys, and it pains me to say. I think I'm leading Petrosky right now for all the reasons you're saying, but at the same time, I do expect we see big improvements from Turman. He's been at that Teixeira camp for just over a year now. He's been talking about how his defense has improved, similar to Adam Reyes, and just mentality has to be huge for Turman as well. Because as gifted as Turman has been athletically, and I mean when he came in, man, he was juiced up. Like I don't know how he's passing some of these USADA tests, but yeah, just very low fight IQ, and I don't know. We kind of seen similar things out of Petrosky, so it's just tough for me to really want to put money on either of these guys. I do think Petrosky's the better wrestler. I do think he's the more dangerous striker. I think Turman could match him on volume, though, and I think Turman's going to look better if this fight does get into the third round. So I have my reservations about taking Petrosky here over -200. I mean, if it was closer to a pick'em, maybe I'd get there. But at this price, this fight just feels like a pass to me. Could get ugly quick. I mean, either of these guys could come out and look amazing, or it could just kind of turn into a slop fest by the end of 15 minutes. So I don't know. Of all the fights on this card, this is certainly far from my favorite. Just two guys it's really tough to ever put your money on and feel good about.
Yeah, I'm about on the same page. Not a fight I'm likely going to have much action.
Yeah, just one more point. I do think the line for Petrosky here is a little inflated because of that Maximov win where he caught him in that choke really quickly. That looks like a great win, but the UFC actually cut Maximov now, so I don't know. It's tricky. I just think that the books have kind of over-adjusted a bit. Yeah, I just don't like the number. The pick for now, Petrosky. This may be one I change by the time our article's out on Saturday, but yeah, not very confident at all.
And keep an eye just on the line movement as well. 200 is actually a discount from where this line was. I think we were seeing Petrosky near 230, 240. So as it closes a bit, he becomes a bit more appealing. But yeah, not someone I'm pulling the trigger on at 200. All right, now to the early prelim portion of the card. The last bout of the early prelims is at lightweight. A lot of lightweight scraps on this fight card. This between Ottman and Zaitar, an undefeated 13-0 facing Matt Favola. Near pick'em fight. This actually was pick'em, but Zaitar has gained a bit of steam now at a -130, -135. I've been skeptical of Zaitar, using steroids like his brother. But I mean, it's hard to deny just the massive power he has shown in his fights thus far. Winning 6 of his last 7 by KO, and 5 of those KOs coming in the very first round. That's the path here. I mean, he's got to land a big shot put out for Vola. For Vola's, better technically, I'd say, better putting it all together, mixing in the grappling. I mean, Zaitar's a good striker. He can he can land in combination. He can, set up feints and land big shots that follow. But definitely if this was like a 15-minute striking match, for Vola would probably be the one getting his hand raised, while Zaitar is more looking for that single shot to put his lights out. I think that happens. We've seen Favola lose in the first minute twice before in the UFC. And yeah, he wants to make this a dogfight. And then for Zaitar, it may only take 1, 2, 3 clean blows to get the job done here. So that's why I favor him. I'd be taking him by finish in this spot, but just betting him straight on the money line, given how close these odds are.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Zaitar here. I think he gets it done. I will say there's a very clear path for Vola. If he can lean on his wrestling, I do think he's the better grappler here. Kind of wear on a Zaitar, take some of that power away through his cardio over 15 minutes. Maybe he could pull off a decision win. But at the same time as Zaitar, he's one of these Ali Abdelaziz clients. And I think we always have to kind of take a look into that. This kind of feels like a tailor-made matchup for Ottman. obviously a great power puncher for the division. All his wins have come, I'm looking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 5 wins in a row by KO. He's been out of action for a while. But yeah, this just feels like the type of fight that the UFC put together to get him another KO win. And I mean, it's telling that this was booked in January, and now they're making this fight all these months later. Like, it really seems like Ali wanted this to be the fight for Ottman here, and I do think he gets it done. He probably chins Fravol in the first round. But yeah, I like the number a lot. I know I texted you like Sunday or Monday, and I was like, we're getting even money on Ottman. Now's probably the time. And we are seeing steam. I think it's 130, 140, some books. I mean, as it gets over that 150 into 160, maybe I'll be less intrigued. But I think you could just take Ottman inside the distance, or take Ottman by KO and probably get an even better number. The path is very clear here. Favola's chin has been suspect. He's going to be the better wrestler. He's had the tougher fights. He has the better resume. But yeah, I'm just not that impressed by him at this point in his career. I think this is kind of a fight that Ali wanted for Ottman, and I think he's probably going to get the KO that they both see coming. So.
Yep, and I'm seeing it the same as you. I think Ottman's the side for that matchup. Moving on now, a fight we don't have to spend too much time on, between two 37-year-old women strawweights, Karolina Kowalkiewicz facing Silvana Gomez Juarez. I'll let you get started on this fight. Let me know what
Thanks.
side you're leaning.
Yeah, I mean, this is a kind of, yeah, this is not a great fight. I agree on that front. So Carolina's going to have more volume on the feet, but she's really not that great, technically speaking. She absorbs more strikes than she throws per minute. Gomez Juarez, really not all that impressive either, but she has really sneaky power for a strawweight. And I think that's what it's going to come down to here. Can she knock out Karolina Kowalkiewicz before Kowalkiewicz decides to shoot takedowns? We saw her against Herrig grapple a bit more than she was earlier in her career, and I think that's the path for her here. Gomez Juarez has really showed terrible takedown defense, but if she can't get her to the ground, I do think she's going to get caught and KO'd. Low-level strawweight matchup. I don't think either of these girls are going to be ranked anytime soon. But if this fight is standing, I mean, Carolina's going to probably have her moments and then get caught. But if she's not going to shoot takedowns, I think she's in trouble. So my lean is Gomez Juarez, but I'm going to go and I'm going to do some digging and see if Carolina's talking about grappling here. If she is, maybe I switch my pick. But yeah, either way, don't put too much money on this one.
Yeah, and the side I'd go is also with Gomez Juarez here. I mean, she's landed 2 knockdowns in the past 2 fights.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yang stunk, but yeah.
It's just a jab and an overhand that she really has, but that could be enough to get by a 37-year-old Kowalkiewicz, someone who's on quite the losing streak until she broke through with that win her last time out. So, I mean, I think standing behind her jab, landing that big shot is going to be what's needed from Gomez Juarez to win. As you said, Kowalkiewicz landing with a higher volume here, but not much behind her punches. So it really is a coin flip. My pick's probably going to be Gomez Juarez, just because I don't want to back Kowalkiewicz. That she's out of her prime, certainly from when she had fought prior in the UFC. So yeah, my lean's going to be Juarez here. And we can move on to a bit better of a scrap now here at featherweight. Sungwoo Choi going against Mike Trizano. These odds are rather close, -165 for Choi at current. Someone I'm probably going to be betting at a number like that. I view him as a better technical striker here in this fight. I think he has a bit more power than Trizano too. And he traditionally struggles when fights are taken to the mat. And while Trizano is like a high pressure, get in your face, land big shots guy, he really isn't one to mix in the takedown too often. So I think in a spot where these two are likely to stand and trade for at least the larger portion of this bout, Choi's going to be the side you're going to want. The better defense when these two are on the feet, a positive striking differential compared to that of Trizano's. And yeah, I mean, power in the past, knockouts in the past, certainly a path to victory here. But Choi by decision would probably be the way I'm leaning. I still am going to dig a bit more into this one and could see myself flipping, just as I've backed Trizano a couple times in the past. But I think Choi at this number is certainly the side that I think my money is going to be going on.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Choi a lot here. And I mean, the biggest reason for it, though, is actually he's recently switched camps to Kill Cliff FC. He's training under Henry Hoof. So he's always been athletic. He's always been powerful. He's always been a good striker, but he kind of left a lot of openings on the defensive end, and he made a lot of mistakes in exchanges. I think getting under a coach like Hoof is going to fix a lot of the problems for him. Trezano's scrappy though, man. I mean, I know we were really heavy on Ludovic Klein against him when Trezano pulled off that upset. Tough spot there, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is a tough fight. I think it could go either way, but I do give the athleticism edge to Choi. I do think he's going to look a lot better technically under Hooft here as well. I don't really think Trezano can like lean on grappling against him or anything like that. He barely averages half a takedown per 15 minutes. So yeah, this is a fight that'll probably take place on the feet. They'll both probably have their moments, but I do think Choi's going to land the bigger shots, and Damage has been winning on scorecards lately. So I like Choi.
Yeah, and then just to add to that, for Mike Trezano against Hakeem Dawodu, I'd say a better striker than Choi. Lost on volume, lost on power. Against Lucas Almeida, someone who I'd say is not nearly as technically sound as Sung Woo Choi. Again, had landed fewer power shots and landed the fewer strikes overall. So I think Choi does outclass him while this fight takes place for a majority of the time on the feet. Moving on now, bantamweight matchup. This between Montel Jackson and Julio Arce. Jackson right now a minus 220 favorite against Arce, and this is a fight I've kind of been going back and forth on. I really can't give a solid pick until we see weigh-ins here. So be sure to check out Dime Sports come Saturday morning for our final write-up on each of these fights. But yeah, Arce missed weight his last fight. He was a half pound over, and Jackson is, a 5'10" bantamweight, someone who gets really sucked out to, make the limit. So it's going to be an interesting fight. I mean, Arce could outstrike Jackson. He has the better arsenal of attacks, more kicks, more knees, better working inside, and closing the distance on a long rangey opponent. He's fought, longer opponents in the past, and that pressure fighting style, making it a bit of a dogfight, is going to be beneficial to swing the judges. It just also puts him in risk of getting knocked out against someone in Jackson who has insane power for bantamweight, ton of knockdowns. We saw him knock down JP Buys 4 times in their fight. It's certainly like a power versus volume matchup, but I mean, Arce can crack too. I mean, he's certainly a live dog at this number, and I'm really not convinced on which way to go in this matchup until I see both face off, I see both on the scales, and make weight comfortably. So, what's your lean here going into the fight?
Yeah, so I totally agree with you that we want to wait for weigh-ins on both these guys. They've both had issues with the scale in the past. To me, though, it does feel close to a 50-50. And if we're going to get a nice plus number on Arce, I think he's the side. He lands more volume, absorbs less strikes. Jackson's been mixing takedowns in, and Arce has a 94% takedown defense. So I do expect this fight to mostly take place on the feet. And while Jackson does probably have a slight power advantage, I don't know that it's really going to be enough to put Arce down. We saw Arce KO'd against Song Yadong, who's like, he went to war with Corey Sandhagen. He's clearly a top 10 bantamweight in the world. And yeah, Jackson's faced no one even close to that level. He faced Brett Johns where he lost and was just kind of out grappled. But yeah, I mean, none of his wins are that impressive. Jesse Strader, JP Buys, both now out of the UFC. Felipe Colares, we saw Chase Hooper dominate. Sukum Toth out of the UFC. Arce, though, I mean, that Santos win was nice. It was nice to see him bounce back from that KO. You always have to be a little bit worried when a guy gets put out flat like that. But yeah, I just see him as the better, the longer striker. Both of these guys have range. I mean, the reach advantage is Jackson, but he really doesn't use it all that well. I actually think Arce can kind of pop at the end of his shots, work behind his jab, and kind of keep Jackson on his back foot, which should hurt that power. So yeah, I could see Jackson catching him, maybe putting him out by KO. We have seen Arce starch before, but as long as weigh-ins go fine for both guys, I do like the value on Arce. If we're getting him around plus 150, even plus 170 at most books now, I think that's a really good number.
Yeah, I view it the same. I mean, he is the value side. Again, I'm not certain which way my official pick will go. But certainly putting money on this fight, Arce seems like the better lean just based on where the numbers at current. All right, and the last fight to break down, the opener. This will be 6 p.m. on Saturday to start off the UFC 281 card. Carlos Ulberg taking on Nikolai Negumereanu at light heavyweight. striker versus grappler is how I'd categorize this. I mean, Negumereanu, since joining the UFC, has really looked good putting his hands together. But this isn't the fight where he wants to do so. I mean, Olberg, 4 inches taller, the leg reach, great kickboxing, great control of distance. And I mean, that last performance against Tafon Chukwi just lit him up in the first 2 minutes of that fight. He's got fast hands. He looks to be, more comfortable now inside of an octagon. And against a guy like Negumereanu, who just doesn't have the technical striking to keep up, I think this fight is going to be determined by, Negumereanu's ability to get Olberg down to the mat. And, champ camp here with Izzy, I think Olberg's going to be dialed in, look just fine, sprawl and brawl, and pick apart Negumereanu while this fight's on the feet. I love him at these odds. If he was a big favorite, I probably wouldn't be as hyped to jump on and back the City Kickboxing team here. But this is probably the second strongest leg when it comes to that parlay. I mean, Izzy number one. I would probably put
Hooker.
Olberg there at number.
Hooker number 2.
I'm more confident in taking Olberg here to open the card than I am in Hooker at a slightly bigger favorite. But what's your lean for this fight?
My lean's Olberg. I mean, the thing is, if I was confident Nikolai was going to grapple more, I'd probably back him here as an underdog. It's just he barely averages 1 takedown per 15 minutes. He's supposed to be some credentialed wrestler, but we just don't see him lean on that part of his game enough. And yeah, I mean, Olberg, he's tall, he's long. It's similar to Izzy. He's tough to take down for those reasons. By no means is he going to be the better grappler here. I just don't know that Nikolai is going to lean on that. And then if you just look at the striking numbers, these numbers are pretty skewed because of that Kennedy fight. But Olberg's landing nearly 9 significant strikes per minute, absorbing just under 4. And Negumereanu has a negative striking differential, landing just under 4 and absorbing nearly 5.7. So, I mean, the numbers don't always tell the story, especially in MMA. But for a fight like this, and I do expect it to mostly take place on the feet, I expect Olberg to have more moments. I'm not confident in his ability to score a KO here, though. Negumereanu's never been finished professionally. This guy just eats shots and keeps coming forward. So the one fear maybe with Carlos is if he does start to gas in the later rounds. But as long as he kind of minds his P's and Q's, takes his time, I do think he can pick Negumereanu apart at range. Yeah, I like him at this price. It's just he's still pretty inexperienced in MMA, so I don't want to get too crazy backing him here, but I do think he's a side.
Yep, I agree with you. Should be a good way to start the night for the City Kickboxing team. And that's the card. It's going to be awesome. I'm super excited for UFC 281 coming up. Any final words from you, Nick? Want to give us a shout out for Dine Sports here?
Yeah. Check out the article, usually posted on Saturday mornings. I'm also doing NBA betting articles. We went 2-1 last night, posting those a couple times a week. But yeah, this is an awesome card. We got one more pay-per-view this year, but this is honestly maybe the better one. Really excited to see Frankie Edgar hopefully go out with a win. That's a really great fight to look forward to. We got 2 title fights. And yeah, this is just going to be a great card. I think there's going to be some good betting spots. We'll be sure to bake those into the article. And as always, just thank you for tuning in. We certainly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for listening, and enjoy UFC 281 this Saturday.